Okay, so I do believe we are recording and hopefully everyone can see my screen. Um, Welcome everyone to the Resilience and Self-Love discussion group. Today we are discussing accountability, but we're going to twist things up a bit, okay? So after we're done here today, I definitely want you to leave the perspective of accountability as something you need to fix, okay, about yourself, something that you need to fix about your behavior, your actions. I want you to leave that here in this space, and I want you to take the perspective of seeing accountability as your commitment to the version of you that is currently unfolding, that is always unfolding, okay, in that present time. So today's discussion group, our topic is accountability as alignment, all right? And if we could just minimize distractions and we're going to go ahead and do our grounding activity and ground ourselves into this space and into what we're doing for the next hour, right? I'm going to have you guys inhale and exhale. It's going to be on the count of 6 for the inhale and the exhale. And then we're going to have a hold in between. Okay. And it's going to be for a count of 3. So you'll exhale for 6, hold for 3, um, inhale for 6 and hold for 3. And then we'll do that for 3 rounds. Okay. Excuse me. We'll do that for 3 rounds. So go ahead and relax your shoulders, plant your feet on the ground, relax your hands. Um, and if you are comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes, or you could just pick a focal point in the room and connect with a soft gaze with that focal point, right? But just bringing your awareness to this space, to this time, and to this activity. So go ahead and inhale, and we're going to do that for 6, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold for 3. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're gonna go ahead and inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold. 2, 3. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold 2, 3. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. I forget I have my counter that I can use. So things got a little shaky right there. Anywho, accountability as alignment is the topic today, and the intention for the group today is being accountable for growing into our unfolding, right? We are the blooming onion, if you've ever seen that before at the restaurant. And so the affirmation for today is accountability is my commitment to the version of me that is evolving. Okay, I'll say that one more time. Um, it's accountability is my commitment to the version of me that is evolving. So if you didn't catch it, the affirmation respects the process of change that is constant. And we know that the one thing that is true is change is always constant. It's something that we cannot alter, right? Whether it's something that's changing with us, our situation, or things that are changing around us. So reframing accountability. When you hear accountability, what is popping up into your mind first? If you guys have your chat open, go ahead and type your first thought. I'm going to say choose one word to type, right? Type your first thought in the chat. Um, Now, I've tossed a few ideas onto the slide. So some of those things you may resonate with or not. So anything different, I definitely want to take a look. Okay. Um, yeah, I just do some, not for good measure, but just want to give some ideas and kind of spark something there. I do like maintenance. Okay. Maintenance is a favorite of mine. Think of it as like a personal cleanup crew, right? When you're talking about accountability, because it's about your actions and what's going on in your experience, whether you're taking ownership or not taking ownership. You're kind of tidying up after yourself, right? And sometimes if we feel like we're holding other people accountable, then we could feel like we are tidying up after others or, getting after them to do so. Um, okay, then there's the punishment angle, and we have that there on the slide. Punishment, whether that means someone needs to apologize, right? Or there's these social and legal repercussions. So, what do I mean by social punishment? That is the world of cancel culture, right? Or people might dox someone, and that is a form of harassment because they may send their followers or, people start posting public things about individuals so that others can have access to them and do undesirable things or say undesirable things, right? And so we get into this thought that we can harass folk, right? Or push them that way into this moment of reflection or into making a change in their behavior. I mean, sometimes harassing leads to jail time. It doesn't it doesn't lead to any type of change. So that's why it's just not an effective thing to do, right? And at some point, we have to realize that people are going to have ideas and they're going to have behavior that is not desirable. So while we don't control this under other individuals, then what can we do as far as how we're responding and how we are carrying ourselves, right? Sometimes punishment includes restitution as well. But today I want to flip the script on how we're receiving accountability and how we're using that word accountability, what we think of when we apply it in our own lives. And so if you could picture it as a conscious choice, right? Your choice to realign with your vision, with your overall vision for what you have for your life, and more so with your values, right? Because our values are our driving force to what's going on with us. Now, it's about it's about being intentional with your transformational journey, not just dishing out corrections all of the time. And so I want to drop or get away from the scolding routine and kind of focus on being able to realign with our authenticity and who we truly are and lead authentic lives, right? So whatever we're saying and doing, both of those things line up and we feel good about those things. So let's jump right into the discussion today. We see that the reframing and accountability on the traditional side, you have that punishment, that guilt, that need to fix something. And today we're upgrading in the space and tying accountability to our evolution, to our realignment, and to conscious choice. So as we get into the discussion, I want to flirt with opening Pandora's box a little and think about, I want you to think about a time that you feel comfortable sharing, okay, in this space, when you held yourself accountable, not to fix it and really honor who you are, right? Honor your values, honor your position on something. Okay, so maybe you didn't issue an apology because you did mean to say what you said, and that's something that you're not compromising in that moment, right? Maybe you hold a value or a belief that makes other people feel uncomfortable, right? But that's your authentic expression, and so you don't feel that it needs to fix anything. So I don't want to place any limitations on what can be expressed, but I am asking folk to be mindful of why we are in this space, okay? And our safe, our ability to safely express ourselves. Okay, so this space is not for just political debate or to make disciples. It may be part of your experience, but that's not the purpose here today. So I want you to feel comfortable sharing that, because this is also a safe space to share your perspective without being attacked. Okay, so let's go ahead and open it up for discussion. And it's, when have I held myself accountable, not to fix a mistake, but to honor who you are, to stand next to your values, right? All right, so let's put this on pause so we can have a little bit of discussion. Okay, so with our with our discussion, I think it is important to realize that there will be a lot of times when what we're thinking and what we're doing, how we live our lives, right? The principles, the values, they may not resonate with individuals that we are around, that we share our spaces with, right? Sometimes even in our own families, it may not resonate. Does it mean that someone needs to change that? And I think that's what we have to ask ourselves. No, um, it definitely brings in the conversation of, what you're saying, how you are treating people, how you are respecting their right to be as well. And so accountability always gets into that conversation. Right. But just because someone doesn't agree with your ideas or how you live, how you your perspective on life, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to change it. What we have to look at is what type of harm is being done as well. So that was an interesting space for the conversation. But now I want to go ahead and dive into the world of alignment mapping, right? So once we decided what our vision is, we talked about some core values, maybe chosen a few that we want to operate on or that we recognize in our lives. Then it's all about weaving those things, our values, our actions, and our vision into this rock solid version of who we are, right? That's us bringing our authenticity out. So I want you to imagine crafting like a compass. And this compass is always pointing you to your true north. Even when life's whirlwind tries to spin you around, right? Even when people are thinking, okay, you need to get on board with this or you need to get on board with that. What's that saying? A lot of people say, you have to be concerned with, um, what's the right thing to do, not just that everyone else is doing it. And so this is that compass that puts us in a space of choosing the right thing to do, right? Now, the goal of this alignment mapping activity is to redefine accountability as something that is creative, and something that is self-loving realignment. All right. And so it supports staying focused on the inside job that we're always talking about, because what goes in is what's oozing out into our environment. Now you'll see everything put together and you see that those three main boxes, and I kind of try to zoom them out a little bit, right, from the document, but you see those: resilience, personal development, and self-love. How are we being accountable? How are we showing up in those particular areas of our life as far as accountability goes? And so with resilience, we have our core values aligned there. And then, well, I've used this with resilience. We have our core values aligned there, right? Um, we have our aligned thoughts. So the things that we think, which lead what we do, right? That aligns with these values. We have the behaviors, the things that we do. We have the things that we do that don't align as well that we can identify. And then how do we realign? What can we do to get back on track, so to speak, right? So, the first thing that you have to do before you get to this space is be able to define your core values. And when we think about core values, you want to think about principles that matter most to you, right? And these are the anchors of our alignment map. So, some values that are common might be like compassion or growth, honesty, freedom, community. So those are the things that you're thinking of there. And looks like we have that on each area, how it would focus. So um, I want you to try this prompt when you're thinking about your, let me see, I'll put that in the chat. I don't know where it went. There's always something with the presentation, right? Okay, so I copy paste that in the chat. So with the prompt, right? When I feel most like myself, what values am I living by? So that's a way to kind of pull out those core values. I have a few other tools that you can use as well. Definitely jump into the group to try to check that out. But that's one prompt that you can use right now in this moment to try to start thinking about what your core values are. How do you operate? What do you operate by? What's that? The why. Okay. How is your compass leading? And once you've identified your core values, then you have the aligned thoughts or and behaviors, right? So for each value, we can ask what thoughts honor the value, right? What thoughts um, align with those values, and what behaviors are you expressing outwardly that's living out those values? Okay, so that's what would go in the aligned thoughts and the behavior section. And then you have your misalignments. And this is not a space for judgment when we talk about misalignments, okay? What this is about is awareness. It's not about blaming yourself for anything. And this is not the time to do that, right? Um, you want to be asking, like, where in my life do my actions or thoughts stray? They're not meshing with my values. And then challenge yourself and ask why. It could be because of what other people think around us. It could be because it makes it easier to hold a certain position, right? Or maybe you're in the spotlight, and so there's expectations surrounding what your behavior should be. And so you don't feel like maybe you could express your full self, right? And then we have the fourth element, which is the alignment actions, which is really the realignment. Okay. So with your realignment, that's really your how-to guide in your alignment mapping when you sit down and you kind of make this blueprint, right? So you're looking at small steps. And again, it doesn't need to be big or grandiose, but you're looking at small steps that can bring you closer to what your vision is, right? Align with your vision. So what would be an example? Um, if you like, let's talk about people pleasing a little bit. So if you've noticed that people pleasing is something misaligned with your authenticity, like those two things don't go together because you're not expressing your own opinions, you're not taking action that lines up with who you are, okay, then your action might be taking a pause, right? Before you agree to something, right? Oh, people, you want to be agreeable, you don't want to rock the boat or whatever, so you just say yes, and it's difficult for you to say no. Then you might pause, okay, and ask yourself, well, does this serve me too? I know this is what my person wants. Sorry about that, guys. I know this is what my person wants, right? But is this something that I also want? And if not, How can I take an opportunity to communicate this and have this conversation and to express what my wants or needs are as well, right? So, um, when we are choosing the action, what will we do when we get into these situations when we don't want to say yes, but we know that's what's expected on the other end? Then the alignment action would be to pause and reflect on, is this serving you as well? Is this something that you really want to agree to? And then once you get into that space, okay, if it's a no, how do I communicate that no? Because communicating the no gets you back into alignment with that authentic expression, okay, with the vision that you have for how you're showing up in life, all right? So it's not something that you can forget or it's not something that you have to have in stone either. I want people to remember that. When we're talking about alignment mapping, it's always a working document. Um, and it's working, it's a working process because we're always in a working process, right? We're always evolving and little changes are being made, more information is being collected. And so we're always building upon those foundational things that we have and our core values are our foundational things. Okay. So if you're feeling off course, this would be a good tool that you can use to get back on course. Um, even when you feel like, okay, sometimes people get in the space of feeling like they've grown enough in a certain area. This is also a way to add new territory to that area. All right. And so when I did this example, this was about resilience, right? How to build in that area, how to build in the area of self-love, how to build in the area of personal development. So if you take a look at resilience and the core values, you'll see I chose courage, perseverance, and hope, right? And so, what would align as far as thinking with that? Two things like I've survived hard things before, right? Remembering that pain is not the end of the story as well, and to check our alignment with our courage and our perseverance and our hope. Um, One thing is about reaching out for support. I like to put that in because people sometimes view reaching out for help or having a community of support is an indication of weakness, and it's not, right? So we sometimes need the courage to do that. We can have our grounding as well. That keeps us able to have a space open for hope, and then being able to keep promises to yourself as well. How might we be misaligned, or what would we notify about being misaligned? Maybe we are avoiding things, avoiding people. Maybe we are in self-isolation, isolating ourselves, right? Maybe we are caught up in spirals of shame as well, as far as when we reflect on our behaviors. And so when we're feeling that way, we can take that moment to kind of zoom out and visualize what's the strongest version of me, right? And what would the strongest version of me be doing right now? Okay. If presented with this situation. So this is what's going on, right? But what do I envision to be the best case scenario for me in this situation? And start thinking about ways to actually realize that. When we talk about self-love, core values of worthiness, right? Having compassion with ourselves and expressing our authenticity. And so we might be thinking or wanting to remind ourselves that we are enough. Okay, not that we need to do this or do that, not because I need to have better hair texture, not because I need to lose weight, not because what a lot of things that we just think about with our physical appearance. And if I did this or if I did that, right, then maybe people would like me more. The narrative is not about that. It's about first, how much do you like yourself? How much Can you take ownership in liking and loving yourself, right? Because again, that's the blueprint to showing everyone else how to treat you. So first, how do I treat myself, right? Can you be kind to yourself? When things are not going well, when there is failure, when things fall short of expectation, can you still be kind to yourself? Can you still have compassion with yourself? Okay, so those are some of those aligned thoughts that go with self-love. And so if we're aligned with those core values, then we may be able to say no and not feel guilty about saying no. We are setting healthy boundaries, right? They're not too loose, they're not too rigid. And we're able to affirm our strengths, right? And really live in those strengths and use those strengths to help us improve and build upon those areas where we feel like, okay, I don't feel so confident in this area or this thing, or um, I like to improve my responses to individuals, like with our anger, right? When someone's falling short of what our expectation is. Um, so then if we're not aligned, we may see ourselves overcommitting, right? Because we're not able to say no. We may have negative self-talk, right? And we have to find out where that self-talk is coming from, if it's originating with us or if it's originating from our environment. And then even perfectionism, my friends, can be misalignment when we're talking about self-love, because it's impossible to be perfect, right? There's always going to be these imperfections. There's always going to be these moments of learning and these lessons that we can take with us, right? And so we can appear perfect, but usually on the outside, that's how it works. On the inside, there's perfection that exists in us, and it's okay. That it's like perfectly imperfect is what I like to say, right? And so if we're noticing ourselves to be misaligned in self-love in this way, then maybe something that we can do is pause. Like when you criticize yourself, you can insert another statement when you recognize it, right? But the best practice is when you are thinking about how life is going, and especially when things are not going very well, and that's how you're receiving it, you have to offer compassion to yourself, like your own good friend, right? Or if you had a niece or a nephew, then you want to offer advice to yourself in that way and have that same compassion and understanding that you would have with someone else. Now, sometimes do we not have compassion with ourselves and we don't have compassion with others? Yes. Okay. So in a perfect world, we're able to say, this is what I would say to my friend. But there are other scenarios that definitely don't align with that either, right? And then that's about exploring, where is that even coming from, right? It's usually something that we have picked up. And so those things have to be explored a little bit more. With personal development, choosing the core values of growth, of course, right? Maybe having curiosity and maybe the integrity, being able to be honest about our areas of growth. So aligned thoughts might be like allowing yourself to evolve and reminding yourself that you're allowed to evolve, right? Evolve. And then also remembering that whatever progress, big or small, it matters. You don't need to be perfect, right? And so not forgetting to recognize those things. Everything doesn't have to be a big celebration. You don't have to get an award for everything, but you also don't have to discount the small things that are happening in the small areas of progress that you're making as well. Okay. So with that, your behavior, your actions might be taking the opportunities to learn something new, or going and asking for feedback with those trustworthy individuals in your life, in your community, and then honestly reflecting on, right, that integrity, honestly reflecting on your experiences, your actions, and your responses. Noticing that we're misaligned in that area might be when we're comparing ourselves to others. Okay. When we have rigid boundaries, right? The only way that we feel safe and feel comfortable is if That might be like isolation, right? I don't trust people coming in, and so it's just better that I not interact with any people, right? That's the example of a rigid boundary I can think of right off the top of my head right now. And sometimes it can be misaligned with our definition of success, especially when we start comparing ourselves to other people, right? So if we notice that we're mostly misaligned or a lot of our actions are misaligned, then we can get back into alignment by remembering that failure, that's data that we can work with, right? That's the first attempt in learning or frequent attempts at learning, right? So it's data that we can work with to make adjustments. It's not the end of our experience. It's not the end of what we can build on. And it's definitely not our identity. It's just experiences that happen. And those experiences allow us to make those little adjustments to continue moving forward and moving forward successfully, even if it's just a little bit of progress, like I said. Okay. So I want to take a look at an alignment mapping because I said it's something that you can always be working with, right? And people learn in different ways too. And so I want to show the alignment mapping in a little bit of a different way and a little bit, I'm going to try to show it electronically for one of the ways that I work with people as far as mind mapping goes. So let's look at it. Now, what you're seeing here, or I was trying to depict, was like little sticky notes, right? So you have whatever, like we have the resilience, we have the personal development. So in the middle of that is, what's the vision for this? What is the vision for self-love? What is the vision for my personal development? Sorry, guys. Um, and then we have these questions that we can ask surrounding that, right? One of the sticky notes says desire and vision. One of the sticky notes says what the current practice is. So what our behaviors are, whether we're in alignment or out of alignment, right? And then one of the sticky notes says realignment. So what actions can I do to get back in line? And we talked about getting those core values, those actions. And what you see are those, I don't know if you are familiar with those tabs, right? If you've ever done any kind of filing, um, labeling, you might be familiar with these little tabs that you can put on the bottom of your paper so that you can actually use it to turn to the page that you want to turn to or for that section or whatnot. And so that's what you see on the sides there are little tabs. And a good thing to do, or what I would suggest is taking the little tabs and writing down like core values. What are your 3 to 5 core values, right? So write those on some tabs. That's part of your working board for the alignment mapping. Write down some actions, right? Some things that you want to do, and then write down all of your actions that you're doing right now, right? So have all of those things on the sticky tab. And then you kind of go and you are um, tabbing them to the applicable sticky note, if that makes sense, right? So, for example, here on the desire or the vision, that's your sticky note. And then it says, I desire to feel. Um, there's some things around, like it says, worthy. Um, it's a busy morning. It says curious, authentic, right? So then you could take those tabs and stick it to that particular sticky note, right? Because these are some feelings that you want to experience, um, you want to align with. Another question is, I envision myself as someone who does what? Are you envisioning yourself traveling? Are you visualizing yourself serving others, right? Okay. So then you would attach that sticky note there. And then we've got our vision. We know what we're looking towards. So what are we doing right now that aligns with what our vision is. Okay. So that's the habits or thoughts, right? What environments are you engaged in? Are they supporting what your vision is? Or are they draining you when it comes to your vision? That includes, when I say environment, that's your community, who you're engaging with, right? And then we have the realignment, which is instead of doing this, right? Instead of what my current practice is, then I'll do this. So maybe instead of overcommitting, I will say no, right? Another prompt is I can create an environment that supports this by doing what? Doing it by reframing. Um, do we need to have courage? Do we need to enforce our boundaries? Okay. So that's a way that you can visualize what's going on at every moment, right? But also you can make changes with what's going on as well. So that's just one of those visual ways. So right now, I want you to take a moment to grab a sticky note or a piece of paper, just anything that you have available to take some, jot a couple of things down and something to write with, okay? I want you to kind of separate it into three sections. So if you have sticky notes, get 3 sticky notes out, all right? If you have a piece of paper, then somehow make 3 sections that you're gonna write in. You can either do that in columns, you can fold the paper that you have, however you're gonna section it off, okay? Um, you choose. And in the first section, I want you to write, what am I moving toward? Okay, so that's what you're going to write in the first section. What am I moving toward? And then in the second section, you're going to write, what am I currently doing that's aligned or misaligned with this desire? Okay, so first column is what am I moving toward? So what's the desired vision? And then the second section is going to be what am I doing currently that aligns or misaligns with that desire, right? And then the last section or column is going to say what transition or change can I choose now? So what can we do to realign? All right. So 3 sections, 3 sections, 3 sections. Okay. And we're actually going to take a moment to at least jot one desired vision. That doesn't have to, again, it could be something small. It could be something like getting to work on time, right? However you choose to work with it, I want you to go beyond like tracking at some point and really figure out a way to make these actions and behaviors part of your life. But I want to take a moment to pause right here. And if you're watching the replay, then I'm going to have you guys pause and we're actually going to fill out these 3 sections. We're going to jot something down and let's just have a little bit of discussion. So first, let me give you, let's take 10 minutes, okay? And reflect on, let's get a vision, something that we want to do, build upon change, right? A desire that we have, and then what's aligned or misaligned with it, and then what actions we can take to start aligning with it if we're misaligned, okay? So let me pause for a minute here. I like alignment mapping. Like at first, it's a little bit to wrap your head around or whatnot. But once you start to wrap your head around it, it comes like so easily for you to identify certain things and to make correction when you're not aligned, or at least figure out like, do I want to even address this, right? Because sometimes you're not going to want to address it for whatever reason. And then that's when you start thinking about why don't I want to address this, right? And is it something that I always want to deal with? If not, then how do I get into a position of aligning with what I would like to do, what I would like to say, what boundaries I would like to have, right? So it's really being, again, that accountability piece to being authentic, to expressing ourselves authentically, to showing up in our spaces authentically, right? It's our accountability to that space, to our growth, okay? Not just focusing on Um, like I said, the external, not focusing on having judgments about ourselves. But again, we're always in the thought of moving to our desired reality, our desired expression, right? Our desired, like being able to present our authentic selves so we can receive authentic acceptance, inclusion, right? Love. Okay. So taking ownership, right? I definitely had a vision of living my life, like really rich with this intention and really taking ownership of my experiences, really being authentic and being able to express that because I had reached a space in my life that I didn't feel like I was expressing myself authentically. I felt like I was doing a lot of people pleasing, right? And so my actions, I wanted them to match how I saw my life and what I thought success was, right? So I wanted my vision to be spoken out loud, but I wasn't doing that. Okay. Um, I was always getting involved with projects that were similar to what I wanted to do because I wasn't fully, I would say I wasn't fully convinced that it was something I could do myself. And I knew the reasons for that as well, right? Whether I thought I belonged in certain spaces or I was concerned about how people would receive me in this space or whatnot. But I really had to come to the realization that I was spending energy and time on things that didn't support my vision or express my ability at all. So I did view it as fulfilling, right? And doing the best that I could to live the life that I imagined. But really, I was just comfortably stuck. Okay. So I was passively living someone else's version of my authentic vision, how I saw life for me, right? And so because I really wasn't working with the folk the way that I envisioned, I wasn't really doing the work that I the way that I envisioned it. I was just kind of really doing my best to replicate what my employer or what my partners wanted, right? And trying to find ways that I could express my authenticity in those same spaces, right? But when it came to realigning, right, being honest, I had to be accountable to what I was taking ownership of, right? And I had to be honest about what I was doing or not doing, and the decisions I was making that contributed to how I may have been feeling at that time, right? So it wasn't like, oh, well, this isn't happening for me because um, these people are not accepting. Oh, it's not happening for me because people who look like me are not in these spaces, right? Like those are not good reasons for me not to show up authentically or be in those spaces. And so I ended up sitting down and making a list of things that I needed to do. And I had to start asking deeper questions of myself as well. I had to start really considering if I was afraid to do it, if I needed permission to do it. And that's what I was waiting for. Um, Definitely, we have to consider dealing with our egos. And that was something that was part of my reflection as well. And also, was I really allowing flow? Like, was I presenting obstacles? Was I given an opportunity for flow? And some of those answers I really didn't like, right? So that process, it wasn't just about like my strategy, right? Not just about the strategy for myself, but it was also about courage. Is that a value? How am I aligning with that value? It was about being honest with myself, about being honest with my experience, about being honest with my outlook as far as um, what I wanted to do in my professional life. And it was about being authentic in doing that, right? Then I needed to figure out how to commit to those actions in my daily routine. Like what would support my vision and translate alignment into this actual action, right? So not just having the vision, but how do I move forward to it? How do I realize the vision that I have? And so for me, there's these things that, I just wrote down. And it was like, okay, what is it that I need to do? Where is it that I'm uncomfortable? And it sort of became this checklist that um, I started looking at or whatnot. And that may happen too. Um, Vision boards, things like that. Those are things that we post publicly to remind ourselves where we're going and you know what that drive is, because the desire is what's keeping us. That's the why. Okay. So some things involve me reading about certain things, getting a little bit more knowledge. Sometimes it was about investing in myself, right? Um, and maybe I didn't have what I needed to invest, so I had to save things up. So it was just like those small intentional steps rather than saying, "Oh, I don't have it." Well, um, what avenues, like how can I open up an opportunity to have it, right? Um, Sometimes I had to say no, even though projects were good projects and I wanted to be a part of them, but I hadn't finished my projects, right? So I had to come to a space of not overcommitting. Okay. So as you can see, the examples in this particular meeting are personal ones, right? So not overcommitting, and that meant learning how to say no. And I did not always feel good about it, right? But I also had to remember, okay, that's the commitment. You haven't finished, so you can't take on anything new, right? Sometimes it might be a fear of missing out as well as why we can't say no. But it was really saying, okay, this is important enough for me to work on, right? Even when things weren't always coming together, even when I felt like, oh, I don't really know what's going on with this, that's when um, I have to take the initiative and have the courage to seek out the skills, to seek out the knowledge that's going to give me the skill, right? To be able to execute and pull through. So it's just really important to remember that the small things that they matter, they definitely add up. Okay. A lot of significant happenings can lead to our big picture. We don't always see how the puzzles fit together, so we can't see that big picture, but all of the puzzles, all the pieces of the puzzle definitely matter. Okay. So we want to create habits that feel like freedom, or habits that we can see leading us to that freedom. And freedom comes when we view our actions as realignment instead of requirements or what we have to do. Okay, this is what I have to do. Um, Usually when we're thinking about things in that way, it's not something that we want to do. Okay. And that deserves to be explored, maybe not in the moment, but in a time of reflection, a time that we sit aside to reflect on our experience. And you don't need to wait for permission or perfection to begin. Okay, what you're trying to move to. Like if you have a big vision, big goal, then you just break them down into smaller steps, right? You don't have to wait until an opportunity presents itself to be the big vision, the big goal, right? So you want to see that you're worthy for the aligned action right now, right? It can be gentle, but let it be real, let it be authentic, let it be something that you're willing to take ownership of. All right. So I want you to be able to be open, and I want to do an activity right now, just some sharing. So nothing as involved as the alignment mapping, but I want to break you guys down into pairs and have you do some sharing more intimately. And I want you guys to first start with just reflecting on an upgrade that you're desiring in your life. Okay. So it may come from the alignment mapping that we just did. If you want to use your desire from there, you can. If you want to choose something different, you can. Okay. But I want you to start with just reflecting on that desire in your life. And I want you guys to brainstorm like what kind of support would you desire, like that's not available to you right now? What kind of support do you have that does help you with this desire? All right. Um, or what kind of just support do you need to make your desire a reality? All right. And kind of share what it would feel like to move toward your desired vision or goal, okay, versus thinking about the things that you need to fix. So I'm gonna have you guys break out in pairs and share with each other. We'll do that for 10 minutes, about 5 minutes for each person. Okay. So give me 1 minute here. Okay. So you had a chance to share your desire, right? So when we talk about taking ownership, I want you to think about what's one way that you can celebrate or make this action, this support, um, part of your experience rather than just thinking about it, acknowledging whether it's there or not. How can you take ownership and make it a part of your experience every day? How does it just become second nature? Okay. I'm not going to have you guys share out on that. I just want you to be thinking about that after this meeting. All right. So, what's one way I can celebrate or ritualize these alignments rather than just track them? Not just putting our alignment map up, right? But making it materialize, tangible, making it something tangible. Okay. So what's the commitment? Of course, I have to encourage you guys to commit to something, commit to yourselves. And when we have a goal, but we don't feel so good about getting to it, the energy of that emotion drives everything about our actions and our emotions. Okay. If someone is telling us that we can't do this and we can't do that, I wouldn't do this and I wouldn't do that. And that's something that keeps playing in the back of our minds, then we have to start asking why, right? Why is that coming up for us? Is it not possible because the education is not available? Is it not possible because we don't have the time? Is it not possible because we don't have the resources? Because it's not just the feedback. We are taking ownership of that feedback. So these are the questions that we're asking as to why are we also taking ownership of that feedback, right? Because we don't know how much time we have, right? On in life, we don't know. And when we wake up every morning, we don't know if that's going to be the last day or it's not going to be the last day. Okay. Yeah, it's not something that we put our focus on, right? We focus more on what we can do with the time that we have. So there's no value in tracking that time or wondering, is this going to be the moment? Is this going to be the moment? Right? There's no value in that. So we don't do it. Um, anything that can happen in the course of, like anything can happen in the course of like whatever we're doing, something can happen that will fast track the things that we're committed to, or something can happen that will slow them down, right? But it's our responses and our ability to be accountable to our values, because our values are our why, and our why gives us the endurance to push forward regardless of the weather, right? So we don't know what we know until we know it. If we're worried about, oh, I don't really know how to do that, or I never done that before. That's great, actually, right? We don't know what we know until we know it. So it's a good idea for us to find out what's available, expose ourselves to it. What opportunity do we have to expose ourselves to it? Because they're just tools, right? So we can find ways to get comfortable with trying out the tools, with using the tools, with adapting the tools. All right. So we have to understand it's important to understand what kind of learner we are as well. That kind of helps when we're trying to choose what tools work best for us. But find out why you have decided to take on the ownership of what folk have commented, what the feedback is about what you're doing or how you're moving forward in your life. Because it's there because you've resonated with it in some type of way. Okay. And if it's simply because you don't want someone to feel sad or you don't want someone to feel left behind or disappointed, whatever else other people can be feeling, then be accountable for your decision to dim your light. Mm-hmm. Be accountable for stopping your boat from sailing to your destination. You have to be accountable for that, right? It's not that other person. At all times, we have the decision to do that. In an extreme example, there was a debate I was watching, and someone was bringing up the fact that they had placed substances, controlled substances in underprivileged neighborhoods, right? And that affected the growth. And the one question someone asked, or the person they were debating with, they asked, you know, but did they make you sell those products? Like even though it can be presented, we still have to make the choice of what we want to do with what's being presented. So yeah, they dropped the substances into the neighborhoods, right? But when are we going to be responsible for the action of distributing it? They made it accessible, but at the end of the day, there were still choices made to distribute it, right? So there's that accountability. And accountability is not supposed to be a cage, right? That's what I said. It's not about blame, but it's about recognizing like, hey, that action is not aligned with my vision for my community. I don't visualize a community where substances are taking a hold of my people, right? And so then if we are selling those substances, is that action misaligned with the vision of success for our community? Okay. It's not about blaming, it's about recognizing how we want to redirect our votes. All right. That's an extreme example, but it's just a compass. Okay. It's just a compass. So I hope you guys choose to stop holding yourselves hostage. Because when you're thinking that, oh, I have to fix it because of this or because of that, right? There are things that you want to make adjustments to. But when you're making those adjustments, are you doing it because it aligns with your true authentic self, with the desired vision that you have for your life? Or are you doing it because it's going to make the other person, other people feel better? Because going against the grain feels uncomfortable, and it will always feel uncomfortable. Okay. So accountability, when we're talking about alignment, it shouldn't feel like a cage. It should be something moving you closer to this experience of freedom, right? So, um, hopefully you guys can start letting the best of you be revealed on your journey, um, while you're unfolding, while you're being that blooming onion, right? So the commitment for today is I'm choosing to align with, and you're gonna fill that in every day this week. Put that on a sticky note on your bathroom mirror, on your refrigerator. I'm choosing to align with what? Okay. And I'm not even gonna, again, something that we don't need to share. Just put that on your mind. Put that on your mind. Um, I've had a good time. I know it's like a lot to chew on. Hopefully it hasn't been too much, but I definitely had a good time on this subject, and I always do when I'm talking about it because it really helps us bring focus. Like we usually have a broad vision of what we want life to look like for us, but I think that alignment mapping and really getting an opportunity to take a look at our core values is something that brings us down to being very specific in our lives and how we're moving day to day. So um, a lot of times when I'm facilitating, a lot of people see it as, oh, I don't see it as teaching anything. Oh, hold on, I got a notice here. I don't see it as teaching anything. A lot of the times when I'm facilitating, I see it as talking to myself, right? Um, but it is a pleasure to have people resonate and understand and say, you know what, that's something that I can really sink my teeth into. So I think this might turn into a topic for a podcast episode too, right? So I can just like streamline the message a little bit. So I think that might happen. But today really helped me remember some pivotal moments on my journey as well. And I'm feeling, I guess, in a way, recharged a little bit. So, anywho, I am going to end the replay right now um, and open up discussion on the floor for like our final reflection so we can share what we want to leave in this space, what we want to release in this space, and what we're choosing to carry forward after we're done meeting here. So just thank you to everyone who is showing up. Thank you for showing out for yourselves as well. And for those who are on the replay, I look forward to seeing you in the meeting again any given Sunday, 11 a.m. Or 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. All right.